I'm Dorothy Marshall, and I am the PWRDF rep for the Diocese of Edmonton. I was drawn to this ministry mainly because I saw it as a tangible way I could make a difference, helping people around the world, and as the old song goes, without ever leaving the farm. As an organic farmer, I've had very little chance to travel, and so I was intrigued when offered the opportunity to go to India with CFGB. I've taught organic livestock management workshops over the years, and I know the value of sharing knowledge and the big difference it can make. So I was really excited, but I felt like I was taking a very big step into a great unknown. So I prepared. I read books about India, I watched documentaries about its history, and I got lots of advice from friends. But I must say, nothing could have prepared me for what I saw and experienced. Until you actually see the reality of the changes possible and put a face and a name to the people involved. And taking the jumble of smells and colors and the traffic, it really doesn't hit home. The projects we would visit were not ones actually supported by PWRDF, but very similar to nature to the ones we do. I think most of us would consider international development up there with mothers and apple pie. Something that is good, of course, and necessary, but maybe kind of ambiguous. We know it's an important part of our faith, of loving our neighbors. The question is, how does it actually work? And is it effective? As PWRDF with its partners work together to end global hunger, we support programs that achieve long-term solutions. This is important. We don't initiate the solutions, but we facilitate local groups, those trusted partners who are on the ground and aware of the local situation. We help them achieve success by supporting their work. This is very respectful and a successful way to operate. The local people are engaged, and it's from the ground up. A hand up rather than a hand out. The root of this important work is that we believe humankind is created in the image of God, and that God's desire is that no person should go hungry. As Christians, we know this is a truth that is repeated many times in Scripture. In India, we visited areas where hunger has been chronic over a long period of time. We met people who do not have enough food or enough nutritious food. Of the almost 700 million people in the world who do not have regular access to nutritious food, these are the people that go to bed hungry every night. Surprisingly, 70% are farmers and 60% are women. In a country where 28% of the global poor live, we would see people working together using new ideas to improve food access for their communities. In India, I learned that international development is many things, but mostly it is people. My companions on this journey were a dozen people from across Canada, mostly farmers like me, and all with a strong interest in social justice. The projects we were to see supported sustainable agricultural development with the indigenous Malto, a marginalized tribal people living in remote villages in the hill country several hours north of Kolkata. Food security is a major problem in this disadvantaged area, with 71% of the people on food rations, which is basically bags of rice. The crop production per acre is very low, and because of the traditional practice of fathers dividing their land among their sons, farms are very small, averaging around 2 acres. The land has been farmed for many generations without the benefit of inputs to improve the soil, and we all know that is not sustainable. Just imagine, they have been farming using the same tools and methods that have been passed down for generations. They work long and hard, and yet they struggle to simply feed their families. Just look at the tools they're using. The settlers in Alberta over 100 years ago had agricultural tools and methods far advanced from what we saw. It was hard to understand how progress had passed them by. It was like a different world. One project we went to was focusing on teaching conservation agriculture. The weather patterns are changing, the monsoon rains are arriving later and are less reliable. Lead farmers in each village have been taught new strategies to improve production of the existing crops, and new crop rotations have been introduced to increase nutrition in the diet. The lead farmers in turn mentor other villagers, and each village is supported by trained agricultural fieldmen. Just look at some of the very simple ideas we saw that have made a big difference in production. The building of stone berms on a steep hill, which catch the topsoil as it washes down the deforested hill during the monsoon rains. Once the soil accumulates, fruit trees are planted in the earth, stabilizing the hillside and providing food. A new rice planting system, where the seedlings are planted in rows as single plants rather than in clumps. Seeding crops in rows rather than broadcasting the seed. Crop rotations. This adds variety and nutrition to the diet as well as improves the soil. And kitchen gardens. Amazingly, this was new knowledge, and for the first time, vegetables are being grown. It's such a simple idea, and yet what a difference. We saw things like tomatoes and eggplant, potatoes, okra, pumpkin, and beans flourishing in these gardens. People were excited to show us what they had grown. We saw gardens jammed into every available space in the villages. Larger male goats mate with the traditional very small goats and gradually increase the size of the goats in the herds. More meat means more income. Papaya orchards with micro irrigation. This amazing tree produces fruit from transplants in only 8 months. Those clay pots have cracks in the bottom to allow water to seep into the soil. Pretty innovative, I thought. Changing from growing rice, which needs lots of water, to vegetable crop rotations, and to use mulch between the plants to conserve moisture. Learn how to make compost and vermiculture to enrich the soil, and learn how to use natural pesticides. Local wells have been renovated, and simple things done like removing overhanging trees whose leaves fall in and contaminate the water. I learned international development is basically about knowledge transfer with life-changing results. The first place we visited really brought this home to me. In this small village perched on the side of a steep hill, we met Raju and Debbie and their daughters. Raju was happy to share the difference the project had made to their lives. Before, they had struggled to have enough food and relied on government rice rations to make it through, and now they grow enough for an entire year. Raju told us, "My wife and I are illiterate. Our dream is to have our daughters educated. We recently sold one of our bigger goats for 5,000 rupees, and now we can afford to send our daughter Biji to school." Biji told us her biggest dream is to become a doctor and to give medicines to the people in her village. International development is about hope. Hope for Raju and his family. Hope for the reality of Biji going to school. In another Malto village, we met Mango. He's farmed his whole life and told us the project had really changed how he farms. Now he rotates different crops, he has a kitchen garden, and he can feed his family. And he was excited to show us the fruit trees in his yard and pick some lemons to give us. International development is about food security, people learning to grow enough food so their kids can go to bed with a full tummy. We went to visit Suki and Murmo and trekked around the paddy fields, which were too dry to grow rice. And we went to see their new tomato plot. They have enough tomatoes to eat and are selling them at the market for income. In their other field, they grow gourds for market. A neighbor has drilled a 300-foot deep well nearby, and they purchase water from him for their crops. They pay for 2 hours per week. It's pretty costly for them. And 300-foot deep drilled well is pretty deep. Their biggest problem is access to water. Suki told us they have learned many new things that have worked for them, and now they see they can learn and change how they do things. So international development, I learned, is also about learning new strategies and the ability to adjust to climate change. In this village, we learned about a women's group that has been established with the partner support and mentoring. And Suki told us each member puts in 50 rupees per month, and they do projects together. They started by building a duck house and got some ducks through the project. Now they have ducks and eggs to sell. With her share of the profits so far, she has purchased a cow and goats, so her family now have increased income. And Suki said, "We now realize that we women can be equal partners. We know we can learn to do lots. Earlier, we were asking the men for cash, but this has changed. We have a voice, and if we want to keep on going, then nothing can stop us." International development is about the empowerment of women, as my friend Colin here found out. International development is about much more than the sum of these parts. It's about people in need of our support. I thought I knew before, but nothing could have prepared me for the poverty I saw on my trip to India. I had no idea of the hardships present in these people's daily lives, just to simply survive. But I was also unprepared for the joy of these resilient mental people. They welcomed us into their homes. They fed us from their gardens, food they were proud to have grown, and they prepared it with their own hands. And we ate together, enjoying the bounty of their harvest. They danced and they sang for us, and made it absolutely clear that they very much appreciated all the support they had received. Simple knowledge transfer that was enabling them to feed their families nutritious food and to have hope for a future for their children. We know that international development is about living our Christian faith. And in Luke 12, Jesus tells us, "From everyone to whom much has been given, much will be required. And from the one to whom much has been entrusted, even more will be demanded." Notice Jesus didn't say asked or suggested or requested, but he said required and demanded. We have been blessed, and we need to share that blessing. It is up to each of us how we respond to the knowledge that more than 700 million people go to bed hungry each night. We live in a world where some have so much, and poverty and hunger should no longer be acceptable. And how can we live out our faith? What can we do? Of course, we can pray. And as we left the villages, many of these people asked us to keep them in our prayers. And we can give. And we can learn. And in India, I learned that we can be part of the solution. We can support respected organizations financially, like our own Anglican PWRDF, which is involved in international development around the world, working with CFGB as well as local partners on projects like those I was able to visit. We can be a voice for ending global hunger. Canada's spending on aid as a percentage of our GNP has reduced dramatically in the past 50 years. We can write our MP and make sure he knows that we think Canada doing its fair share is important. Food is essential. Since 70% of the people facing hunger are food producers, it's important for Canada to increase its support for small-scale farmers, not to cut back. If decision makers don't hear from their constituents, they may think that people don't care. You can make your voice heard. You can make a difference.